Motors proudly presents NASCAR Inside Winston Cup.
No, we got so much to tell you about. JB won the Winston West race, so why isn't he doing the tees? There's some more details to that story. I finished 4th in the Busch race, so I'm going to tell you about it. Schrader's on the road, Phil's setting in. We got all the action from California next.
Hi, welcome to another red-eyed edition of NASCAR Inside Winston Cup. Alan Bestwick here in our Charlotte studios after the literally all-night flight from California. Airplane troubles on the charter flight back. We got back at 8:30 this morning, but Johnny and I nonetheless have shown up to have our input on the old expert panel. If we doze off every now and then, please elbow us and wake us up. We welcome to the program Michael Waltrip, driver of the nation's red Chevy for Matei Motorsports. Johnny Benson, driver of the Lycos Pontiac for Tyler Jet Racing, and sitting in for Mr. Schrader, Phil Parsons, driver of the Kingsford Chevy and the NASCAR Busch Series, who started 40th and finished 24th on Saturday.
24th,
yes.
It really sounds better than it was. I mean, 4th to 24th doesn't sound that bad, but it was pretty ugly. We really built a brand new car and never really got a hold of the racetrack the whole weekend.
This is the extent that you got on TV Saturday, which was this broad picture of the start of the race.
That's pretty good tight shot there. That's about all we deserved to be on TV, actually. But no, we just weren't very good. But guys worked real hard, built a new car, and wasn't exactly what we needed out there for whatever reason.
Schrader is off on Kyle's motorcycle ride across the country. Mr. Benson started 14th, finished 23rd on Sunday.
Yeah,
your race was?
Went the wrong way. We started off pretty good, made it up to about 12th, and then just from that point in time, we felt the handling of the car is just extremely loose. And
that would be Saturday's Winston West race.
Yeah, that went pretty good.
For a while.
For a while, we took a truck engine out of the shop that was 2 or 3 years old, and apparently they didn't like the intake on it. They're about 25 horsepower short, but nevertheless, they took the intake, and not sure what they're going to do. Mr. Helton hasn't decided a fine yet, so I'm sure it'll be more than what we made.
There's good news and there's bad
good
news.
And some bad news.
I have the trophy, but I'm
we beat Kenny though. That was the important part. We're going after the trophy, so.
That's what kind of most.
Yeah. Schrader said that he was the top finishing legal car in the Winston West race on Saturday. So you might have beat him on the track, but he thinks he's got the last word.
Both cars were legal. He bought that car from us out of our shop. And
Schrader's a smart man. He bought that car from Johnny, and he said, I can't wait to go racing with it. You think they sold me the one that's as good as Johnny?
He said on a pole.
Surely they did, he thought.
Michael started 21st, finished 31st on Sunday. There was a rather rattling sound from your car after a bit.
Yes, there was. We ran good, too. I was really excited about the last 100 miles or so that were left because we'd just gotten our car the way I wanted it. It was handling well and was looking forward to the end of the race. But the little Nation's Rent Chevy had a problem under the hood. But we soldiered home to finish. Did you say 31st?
31st.
We soldiered home to finish 31st. And had a great day on Saturday with our Band-Aid Advanced Healing car. What a pretty car that was. Nice spring colors, gray and green and blue. Just the colors.
Gray? Spring colors gray?
Well, like a light gray.
Light gray. You got about as much airtime on the TV broadcast as Phil did, so that's
But he deserves some. He ran good, finished 4th.
Yeah, I was happy with my car and my team. That was a new deal there for that car. I'll tell you about it later.
I'll bet you will. Extensively at one point during our show. Coming up, we will review the weekend's events from California, Saturday's Busch Series event, Sunday's Winston Cup race. Jason Keller is in the hot seat. We'll have question of the week and preview this weekend's action from Richmond as well.
NASCAR Inside Winston Cup is presented by Pet Boys. Cars like us, people love us. And Valvoline Max Life, the first motor oil specially formulated for higher mileage and...
Back on NASCAR Inside Winston Cup to check some of the news headlines of the week, starting with Friday's Bud Pole qualifying out at California. Mike Skinner became the 8th different pole winner in 10 races this season with a lap of 186.0. miles an hour, breaking the old track record by nearly half a second. NASCAR Chief Operating Officer Mike Helton said Friday at California the sanctioning body was still working to resolve the issue they had with Jeremy Mayfield's car from Talladega. The issue apparently revolving around a fuel sample taken from his team during the event. A ruling expected to be handed down most likely on Tuesday of this week. And we discuss those headlines now with our expert panel, Michael Waltrip, Johnny Benson, and Phil Parsons, starting with qualifying for the Winston Cup Cars Friday at Talladega. The top 21 cars all broke the old track record, which was set in the first year when the pavement was brand new at the Speedway. We hadn't come back to it over the last couple of years despite aerodynamics and horsepower. Why this year did we come back to it all of a sudden?
Well, I think that the first year when we were there, they had the different valence and spoiler rule, and the car was just a little bit slower. So, you know, with the valences being right down on the ground and the big spoilers, and obviously with the cars getting better and better in the wind tunnels, the place is still pretty fast.
The tires probably had something to do with it as well, too. And that Goodyear has made, there's been a lot of talk about the new generation of tires we're running. And these tires were sticky, and they weren't goofy like we saw at Atlanta and a couple places where the cars really wanted to juke getting in the corner.
Is that what you said?
They were very consistent and very steady as you tried to qualify, and that elevated the speeds.
I was looking back at our notes from the previous years. We didn't get to qualify last year at California because it rained it out, but the previous 2 years, from what I could see, the pole was about a second faster than it was the previous 2 years in '97 when the pavement was new in '98. And again, as Mike, we have the same rules essentially that we had back then, other than obviously we have a new Monte Carlo and Taurus has a different body. But so I think the tires had a great deal to do with it, if not all to do with it, on the Busch cars anyway.
The Mayfield Talladega issue, a lot of grumbling in the garage and in the media this weekend about how long it's taking NASCAR to resolve the matter and announce whatever penalties are going to be handed down. It's really a painstaking process. This is where Alan editorializes again. I don't think a lot of people have a good perspective on to what detail NASCAR has to go through before they hang a guilty hat on somebody, before they hang a guilty hat on a driver, on a team, on a major sponsor. It's got to be very carefully handled. And in this case where you're dealing with a fuel issue, that's not something that NASCAR just takes inside the truck and decides whether it's bad or not. They have to send it out and send it to some people who can do some chemical analysis and that kind of thing, and it just takes a little while for that to happen. I think we'd all like to know what it's going to be, and certainly Mayfield winning Sunday didn't help that situation any, but it just takes time. Wouldn't you want them to be kind of painstaking and make sure they had the goods on you before they hung a guilty label on you?
Yeah, I think they're handling it perfectly, taking their time to make sure the decision is made properly, and we all understand sitting here, when they take that fuel out of your car and put it in the container to send it off to get it tested, there's a lot of stuff that goes on with that fuel, and so I'm just proud of NASCAR for going to the extent that they do to make sure we all run the same fuel. That's a way that people can gain a tremendous advantage, putting additives in their gasoline, because we run basically Unocal pump gas, and when you add stuff to it, it brings the motor alive, and it's a big help. So certainly if anyone's tinkering in that area, I want them to be caught, and we all want them to be caught, because we want to make sure that everybody's dealing with the same deck of cards. Whether they were or not is something that we'll have to wait until tomorrow possibly to hear.
Plus, it keeps us on our toes, because normally they come and they take these samples and they take them back to the truck. You're not sure what they do with them. You know, they could basically just set them in a corner. Well, now we're finding out that they surely do test that stuff, and they found something that didn't come up to standards in one of the samples, and now they're just finding out what the deal is.
You remember when they did the tire deal with Jeff Gordon's tires when he won the race, took 2 tires on? Well, that wasn't an overnight fix either, or an overnight decision. That took a long time for them to analyze those tires, and from what we heard, they took those tires right back down to the raw materials. So I think it's the same situation with the fuel here, and again, NASCAR needs to take whatever time it takes, and I'm sure that's what they're doing.
Just to give you, to wrap this up, a little bit of perspective, in this case, think of NASCAR as the prosecuting attorney in some sort of a trial where they have to make sure before they bring those charges against somebody that they've got all the evidence in a row to follow those charges through and get a guilty verdict, if you will. That's all they're trying to do, and that's why it takes the amount of time, is to make sure before they hang somebody for this issue that they've got it right, because it's going to be a big deal if you hang somebody with that kind of a thing. All right, let's take a break here. We'll come back, get into our review of Sunday's Napa 500 from California in just a minute. Stick around.
worked hard, you know, a year and a half now trying to get back to this point, and it's just it's a great feeling to know that we can win. You know, we're here to be competitive, and I got the team and sponsor Mobile One behind us, and I mean, it takes a whole team effort. You got to have a good pit crew, good engines, you know, good people to shop. Man, just there's so much preparation in these cars, and be able to come from where we did back to the winter circle. That's pretty cool.
Jeremy Mayfield, winner of Sunday's Napa Auto Parts 500 for the NASCAR Winston Cup Series at the California Speedway. Welcome back to the show. Here to review the event now with Michael Waltrip, Johnny Benson, and Phil Parsons. Starting with our race summary, check out the lead numbers there. 22 lead changes among 15 drivers, and 20 of the 43 starters finished on the lead lap. Well, I thought this was a pretty fun race and very entertaining to sit down and take a look at. Story of the early part of the race was guys who did not make out so well in qualifying, making their way up to the front of the pack. We illustrate with one Jeff Gordon, who started 26th. We'll also see Bobby Labonte, who started 36th, Dale Jarrett, who started 33rd, and Tony Stewart, who started 32nd, all coming up into the top 10 or very close to it in the opening 100 miles. Why were they able to cut through the traffic so cleanly?
Just good race cars. I mean, sometimes if your car don't qualify good, it's going to run good in a long run, and it seemed to be that case in their cars.
And plus, a lot of guys were loose on the start of the race, and that would help them as the race went on, because cars have a tendency there to start pushing the front end off the corner the further you go into a run. So if you're a little loose at the start, you're going to be better in the longer run compared to the other guys. And if you're tight in the start, you can really pick guys off. You can dive down the corner and pass people because guys are guarding against spinning out. That has something to do with tremendous changes, too, in the early part of the race.
Seemed like the high line, as you looked at the pavement, you know, where the darker pavement was, where all the rubber was not high enough for some. I'm thinking of John Andretti in particular. He was all the way out in the gray in the opening laps and went all the way to the lead by running. How come he wasn't crashing?
I want to thank Todd Bodine. We were racing along on Saturday afternoon, and I saw Todd up there catching me. I was running 5th, he was running 6th. And when he passed me, it looked like a man driving in snow. The groove was here, and the white was up here, and Todd was right in the middle of it. And as soon as he went by me, I got right behind him, and I said, "Let's go, Todd." And I found that groove there Saturday, and then Sunday it paid off for me. The track, even though there wasn't any rubber on the road up there, it was plenty sticky. So it's great to have a racetrack like that when it spreads out and you've got a lot of options. That's why you saw such close racing yesterday.
Plus, I'm sure that he was forced up there or got up there at one point in time. He wasn't going to go up there just on his own to find out. But I think he got pushed up there and found out there was enough traction up there to start running up there.
Well, he ran that rim riding line all the way to the lead, up through the first caution, which would wave at lap number 40. We see the problem for the caution here. That would be Rick Mast's car.
The oil line looks like might have come loose. You don't see an engine failure look quite like that. It's coming out of the front fender there. He'll probably come in and get that tightened back up. All the cars.
Where's my bill? That is exactly what happened.
Yeah. Very observant, Mike. Thank you, Alan.
You're welcome.
The cars come to pit road here for our first pit stop. John Andretti comes in leading the race. Just been awesome the first 50 laps. They have a problem here on their pit stop.
Can you
He can't
tell
get
what the
the
problem is?
air hose out from underneath the tire. So he's got to have another air hose. So he runs back, and you'll see, here he comes. Give me another air hose. Go back over there, and he changed the tire. My point here.
Only one problem.
Can't do that yet.
That's illegal.
Well, I don't know about all that. And this is another thing, what's wrong with him, Alan?
Jeremy Mayfield they said they had to bypass
the cooler.
the oil cooler somehow, and I'm not exactly sure,
Something.
but they had to bypass it. Is that just a matter of plugging off a hose, patching out?
Taking two hoses loose and putting a union in together, and then they hook them back together. So that's how you would bypass the oil cooler.
And we do that for qualifying regularly because it generates a little bit more power without it. Why they had to do that then, evidently they felt like the oil cooler was clogged up and keeping the engine from cooling like it needed to.
Well, he did bypass the oil cooler. Andretti there would drop to 38th as a result of being parked on the air hose. And what we meant by illegal is you can only bring those two air guns across the wall, and if one of them breaks, you just have to use the remaining good one to go back and forth to the tires, and so they got away with one there. And
I had a point
to him.
there.
You did? What was it?
Yeah, he come in leading.
You got to get to it.
He come in leading, and he went out in the back and never was able to become a factor again. You talk about track position. This deal is just crazy. The fact that cars running in clean air can run as well as they do, and then guys that get mired in traffic maybe don't ever get a chance to shine.
Wait, that's my point on the next video clip. How about
Mired?
that? Mike Skinner is leading on the restart, gets away from the field big. By the way, that's Mayfield there, who's on the tail end of the lead lap. He lost a lap on the pit stop with the bypass. He's out in front of the leader. Watch how far back from the leader Skinner to the second place group, because they're doing that.
They're mired up.
Yeah. They're running side by side.
I like that word. I just came up with that word.
You know, the reason John Andretti was able to drive to the front because he was the first one to really get up that high, so he didn't have the traffic problem that these other guys did. But, you know, once they saw John up there, then a lot of people moved up, so it wasn't a clear line.
3 wide. Great racing here off turn 2 here.
Plus this track, you know, we only talk about the drafting at Daytona and Talladega, but the draft does help. And when these cars get side by side, you can really feel them slow the cars down. Plus you're just being careful in the corners.
And that's the point that I wanted to make, because he's out there by himself, and look at how far back from first to second. You can't even see him in the frame because they were side by side and he was out there by himself. Really significant slowdown there.
You can feel it.
Yeah.
Can't you?
Yeah.
Okay. Skinner's out in front. Get a caution at lap 76 when Dave Blaney spun. That allowed Mayfield to come back around, rejoin the tail end of the field, and as we now know, he would have a pretty good afternoon from that point on. Lap 99, trouble for Kenny Irwin brings out the caution. A look first at the incident. That would be turn 3.
Oh, and that's the concrete.
And that would hurt, I'm sure.
I'm sure in this case he was definitely loose. I mean, a lot of people have been loose all day long, and depending where you run, you know, when the car's loose, you could run the bottom of the racetrack, but man, the minute you went to the top of the racetrack, it was extremely slippery.
The car's breaking away from their pit stall already. 5 of them getting just right side tires.
This is something I alluded to a couple of weeks ago. Isn't it great to see Goodyear bringing tires that are so good that guys can elect just to get to and shake things up? You see here Park going to the lead.
Watch Presley, the leader, on the restart, though. Whoa! Hello.
He got loose, and that's because Mike Skinner was sucked right up on him, and he was right on his tracks, and then when he did, he pushed Park up the hill, and a bunch of us go by here. But again, Goodyear's deal with these tires is really making the racing better. You're seeing guys in the front here that weren't even in the picture there a minute ago. Robert Presley, Steve Park, Ward Burton, Bobby Hamilton, and Mike got 2 tires on that stop. And Park just kind of holding on there after he got taken up into the marbles. And you think his heart and Presley's heart was skipping a couple beats fast there?
Oh, yeah.
It just scares you to death. You're just thinking, oh, no, I'm going to tear up my car.
Robert fell from 1st to 8th. Steve fell from 2nd to 15th as a result of that run up into the marbles, but got away with all the fenders on their race car, which was probably a lucky thing at that point. A break here. We'll come back and continue our review of the Napa Auto Parts 500 in a moment. On the way to the break, we remind you that Thursday night on This Week in NASCAR, Stacy Compton will be my guest. Stacy with a great qualifying run out in California this past week. One of the rookie contenders on the Winston Cup Tour. Got a question for Stacy? Leave it on the GM Fan Forum number, and we'll hear it, hopefully, Thursday night, 7 Eastern, This Week in NASCAR on Speed Vision. Welcome back to NASCAR Inside Winston Cup as we review the Napa Auto Parts 500 from Sunday at the California Speedway with Michael, Johnny, and Phil. We're just past the midway point of the race in our review now. Leaders began pitting under the green at lap 145, with the last of the leaders stopping at 153. At 149, Tony Stewart almost throws a chance for a good finish away as he tries to get to pit road. Check it out. This couldn't have been fun.
Well, you know it's a green flag pit stop, and you want to try to, you know, make up every second you make
Johnny's
up.
eyes got big.
Johnny said,
Hey, I've been in the grass before, but I like that.
Yeah, he was just trying to get in the pits, trying to do all he could do to get in the pits, and just got a little bit too hot.
What you try to do sometimes, Alan, is pull the thing into second gear before you get to the pit road line so you know what your speed is. And when you pull it in second gear, if you're not matching the RPMs properly, it'll get the back wheels to hopping, and it'll get out of control, and that looks like maybe what happened to Tony Stewart.
The green flag pit stops put fuel to the finish in question. This caution would take it out.
Oh. He jumped the cushion. That's what Schrader would say.
There
he
you
got
go.
up too high and got into the fence. There's a fine line there. We talk about running in the gray up there on top of the track. Sometimes you can run over that line and be fine. Other times the rubber buildup and so forth is there, and it gets you into the fence.
Matt Kenseth had been the dominant driver through the entire midsection of the race. We'll talk more about Matt in just a second. Those pit stops there, Mark Martin, you're on camera.
Yeah.
Mark
I was
Martin,
going to tell you something.
yeah, hang on. Mark Martin stayed out to lead. 4 other teams took 2 tires, and suddenly Matt was in 8th place for the final run. Go ahead.
See, 2 tires totally changed the complexion of the race. The fact that Goodyear is bringing us such good tires totally took a race that a guy was dominating, and he chose to get 4 tires. Other guys said, if we're going to beat this cat, we're going to have to do something. And they had options. They could do something. They could put on 2 tires. They could stay out. They could do things to try to change the outcome of the race, and I think that's great.
Matt Kenseth led just about continuously from lap 87 to lap 220, sometimes as much as a 4-second lead. Very impressive performance. He did not want to see that caution flag, but I just was very impressed that that team performed as strongly as they did.
Well, they did. I mean, when that caution came out, I'm sitting there watching the race, and I said, gosh, now, this is where the crew chiefs really earn their money. Is he going to take 2 to try to maintain the lead? Is he going to gas and go? Is he going to change 4? You know, I'm sure they're looking at, they had such a dominant car that they didn't want to affect the balance by changing 2 tires because they felt like they would be shooting themselves in the foot, I would think. So they went with 4 tires and took their best shot, and I was just worried because of what we saw with John Andretti early in the race. He went from leading the race to having a bad pit stop, going back to 38th, and never really getting back in contention. So that was one of those tough calls that all these guys made, you know, had to make. You can't say that it was the wrong call because maybe it would have affected the balance, and maybe if he'd have changed 2 tires, he might have finished 10th.
Yeah, it was a conservative call.
It was a conservative call, but it was a call, like Phil said. A lot of times when you see a guy with a car better than everyone else's, which Matt's appeared to be, they'll go with 4 tires. They'll say, we're better, we can make up the track position. He didn't count on probably so many people getting between he and the lead. He got back to 3rd, and there was 2 late cautions. Maybe if there's only 1 late caution, he has a shot to win the thing. Who knows? I think Bobby was closing on Jeremy before the very last caution, and Matt was right there with him.
Let's look at some of that action. Mark Martin leading on the restart there, did not pit because his power steering was out on the car, and he was just trying to hold all the track position he could. Quickly after the restart, Jeremy Mayfield moves past him, while Matt is left to race with Bobby Labonte back for 8th and 7th positions. Those the first drivers with 4 tires. You see them right side of the screen. And they've got lap cars in there too, so they're actually, what, 14th, 15th in line.
Exactly, and that's what a lot of times you forget to factor in. When you're talking starting 8th and there's good lap cars up there, that's like starting 16th.
And like they say, it's just getting through traffic. I mean, we've seen it earlier when Skinner was out front running by himself. Here these guys are racing 3 wide and getting slowed down, and the leader keeps pulling away. Yeah. So, you know, it's just good hard racing. They had a lot of cars to come up through, and like I say, Matt did a tremendous job and finished 3rd.
Trouble for Dick Trickle. We'll bring out the caution flag with 8 laps to go.
Loss of traction.
Yeah, right in the middle of the racetrack. For some reason, at the very bottom it was okay, and up in the high groove it was okay, but right in that center, boy, was it kind of slippery.
So that erases the lead that Jeremy Mayfield had built up. Bobby Labonte had been chipping into a little bit after clearing the traffic, but now he's right on his bumper, and we get set to go back racing with only a handful of laps to go.
Single file restart because we're inside 10 laps to go.
Now, watch when Mayfield goes into turn 1. It's going to kind of pop out of frame for a second. Then when he comes back into the frame, he's up the racetrack because the ignition box quit on his car right there. He's fumbling around trying to find the switches, gets the backup ignition put back on, and goes right back around Bobby and retakes the lead. I was just thoroughly impressed with that.
Yeah, that's a great move.
Great
Good
presence
thing he has
of mind.
long arms.
Great presence of mind. I can't reach the switches in most of my cars.
Probably that if it was going to happen, I mean, you hate to have it happen on a restart, but you're not quite all the way up to speed yet, getting into turns 1 and 2. And if it would have happened on the 2nd lap, maybe it wouldn't have been near the outcome. But for him to be able to find out what's happening, hit the switch, and get it going again in that short of a time was pretty impressive, and then be able to get by him.
I was told that Bobby had said he planned on making a run at Mayfield on the outside in 1 and 2 on that first lap. And then when Jeremy shot up the racetrack, he had to kind of check off the gas pedal, and it broke his momentum. So that contributed a little bit to Jeremy being able to get going right again.
If Bobby would have cleared him, I think we would have seen the same thing that we've been seeing. Bobby probably would have just went on and not been, again, because that would have put Jeremy in dirty air and it'd been a lot harder for him to pass. But so if Bobby would have cleared him, I think we'd have had a different winner, but he didn't.
So Mayfield overcomes the lost lap, bypassing the oil cooler. That oil cooler all hot behind his back, and the heat coming up through the aluminum seat left some second-degree burns on his back and his backside. Then climbed out of the car in victory lane. and did this that has now caused
This is what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
You're supposed to get up there, jump up and down, and have a good time, but one thing that you forget is you got to go through tech. But I was surprised that was even an
That
issue.
shouldn't have been. I mean, that's ridiculous. We gotta have some fun.
You gotta be on top of that car, flinging things and throwing stuff, and
Just great excitement. They overcame so much, and I think they were probably surprised to be in victory lane.
Watch him reach inside the
he
window.
goes, "Oh no!"
Oops, yeah, I know what I did there.
Back up.
Sorry, guys.
So the car came up a little bit low in the height sticks. NASCAR has impounded the car. It's being brought back here to North Carolina for further evaluation, and we'll hear more about that
I don't think that will come of that.
later in the
That'll
week.
be pretty good.
Jeremy Mayfield, the 10th different winner in 10 Winston Cup races to open the 2000 season. His second career win, the other coming at Pocono in 1998. Jerry Nadeau cut back on the lead lap from Mayfield at the last caution when Trickle crashed. Came down pit road, got 4 tires, restarted 20th with 4 laps to go, finished 13th.
It was a great move by the team to get back on to get on pit road and get those tires. This is a look at the points.
Bobby Labonte retakes the point lead from Mark Martin.
He does. It's a great battle at the top of the charts with Dale Earnhardt seeking his 8th championship. Still in the top 5. Dale Jarrett's dropped to 6th, 211 points out of the lead. Chad Little's 15th. A good solid performance by the John Deere car all year long. He's been impressive. Sterling Marlin 17th. Our buddies Kenny and Johnny 19th and 18th respectively.
What do you say we do the hot seat next?
Next.
Time now for the hot seat, and a pleasure to welcome to the program one of the contenders for the NASCAR Busch Series title in the 2000 season, Jason Kellerer. There you see some of Jason's racing bio. 3 Busch Series victories included in that rundown, and he joins us here now in our Charlotte studio, and I thank him for coming.
Thank you for having me.
I kind of have to tell a story here. When we got stuck in Las Vegas last night, we were on this charter flight that broke, and there were about 300 people, crewmen and so on, or of Winston Cup teams that sat on an airplane for 6 hours. And during that time, I called Jason, about 11 o'clock Sunday night, said, we're going to be late. I called him at 8 o'clock Monday morning when we landed in Charlotte, said, we're going to be late. And he still got in his car and drove 2 hours to get here and be our hot seat guest, and I'm appreciative.
Well, I really appreciate you having me. I wouldn't miss it.
We really struggle at getting people to come. And so the fact that you actually went out of your way to be here.
Drove 2 hours.
And now we're finding out you drove to get here. Ooh, we're just thankful.
We can't get people to drive across town.
No, and plus, if you ever change the schedule, oh no, Mike, we can't make it today. So thank you. You're having a great season. This team, the last 2 years has had to be fun for you, the way you've come around.
It has been. Got a great sponsor this year with Excedrin, which we were kind of worried about it over the winter not having a sponsor. So they came on board, and really being reunited with Steve Addington last year, I think, was kind of the start, and won some races last year, and there's fond memories there at Bristol there, and it's just it's been fun, you know. Owning my own team, I kind of got burnt out a little bit over the past couple of years, but now I'm racing and really doing what I enjoy to do, and so far it's been fun. This year hasn't gone quite as good as we had hoped. I hope we give our teammate a little bit more of a run than we have, but guys have been working really hard and built all new cars over the winter, and normally everyone would say, well, that would be great, but I really haven't gotten used to some of the new cars, so this weekend in California was good for us, so hopefully that'll be a step of good things to come.
That performance at Bristol last April was dominant. That was as impressive as I've seen.
I tell you what, I never run good at Bristol, and then to go there and to sit on the pole was very surprising. And Steve Addington ran well with a couple of people he was with in years past, and then to go there and dominate like that was really amazing to me also. And the car was easy to drive, and it just went around there fast.
I mean, you touched on the fact that, you know, owning your own deal kind of burns you out. What are some of the difference for our viewers that between owning it and then now just driving it instead of doing both? Well,
the Busch Series now, as Phil can probably tell you too, it's gotten to be a really big business. We had like 15 employees at Kell Racing, and you have to worry about the sponsor, you have to worry about the team, and then you have to try to leave all that aside when you go and drive the race car and really concentrate and drive the race car. So I'm not a multi-talented person, so I have to do one thing or the other, and luckily for me, I got with Greg Pollux and in his group, and he's really put together a competitive race team for me, and I want to drive, and that's what I've been able to do.
You've got a golf tournament that you do
Yes.
last several years. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, actually, this year will be our 6th year. I have a 7-year-old niece who has cystic fibrosis, so we do it to benefit the foundation, and it's been very successful. Had a lot of the drivers come down and play, and we've been able to raise over $150,000 for the foundation. So it's been very rewarding that we've been able. My niece Chelsea's doing extremely good, so knock on wood, hopefully that'll continue, and hopefully we'll find a cure for her.
Great. I know that we would be remiss if we didn't give Keith Barnwell a lot of credit for your success.
Oh yeah, Keith Barnwell has been a big added addition there to PPC Racing, and he's been with a lot of race teams over his career. So although he spots for my teammate Jeff Green, he's the team manager and really takes care of the daily operations. So
tell him he's going to owe me too. He's going to owe me.
Spots for one of our panels.
This would be Hickory's Keith Barnwell that
Hickory,
straight threw under the
from
bus
Hickory,
a couple of weeks
Hickory,
ago.
North
Yes.
Carolina.
Big start for you at Richmond, 200.
It is. It's pretty cool. I tell you what, 200 of them. I don't know where it all went. You know, it's been a long time. I've been full time in the Busch series since '94. So, Richmond for me has been a really, really good racetrack. Set on the pole with a new track record there last spring, and man, I sure would like to have that little red, white, and car there in Victory Lane this weekend. That would be a really cool thing. So, looking forward to it.
Be pretty good to win your 200.
Looking at that pit stop right there, man, I tell you what, I got to commend my guys for how fast their pit stops have been. I haven't lost. I can't remember losing any positions all year long in the pits, and that's one thing that they worked hard on over the winter, and man, have they been fast. So.
We're going to look at the Busch Series race next. I told you we'd ask you to stay to do that. I hope that you will.
Sure, you bet.
Our review of Saturday's Auto Club 300 when we continue in just a minute. This week's Castrol Flashback Fact takes us back to May 2nd, 1976, when Buddy Baker wins the Winston 500 at Talladega. At 2 hours, 56 minutes, and 37 seconds, it was the first time a 500-mile race had been run in less than 3 hours.
NASCAR Inside Winston Cup is brought to you in part by the motor oil that provides maximum protection, Castrol GTX, Drive Hard, and Super 8 Motels. Super 8, all the room you want.
Back on NASCAR Inside Winston Cup to review the Auto Club 300 from Saturday at the California Speedway for the NASCAR Busch Series. Jason Keller, our hot seat guest, joins Michael, Johnny, and Phil. There are our numbers, 14 lead changes among 10 drivers. This was a good one, too. A lot of great competition in this race. And you see that 12 of the 43 starters finished on the lead lap. Several cars just kind of turned around in the early going of this race. This is lap number 2. Blaze Alexander in trouble.
Yeah, Blaze got loose and did, as Kenny would say, the death wobble there, and David had nowhere to go. And
Second week in a row, David, just a victim of circumstances. That's a shame, a very competitive team.
especially right there at the beginning. of the race.
But Alan, this track promotes you setting your car up so loose for the short run so that it doesn't get to pushing on the long haul.
And 13, Derek Gilchrist.
Same thing. He's just early on his tires, and the thing got away from him.
So this wasn't a
pretty good.
situation that he was up in the gray stuff. He was right down in the groove of the racetrack.
Pretty good hit, too.
Hot tamales. That's what he said when he hit.
Jason, you know how this deal works.
I'm not going to jump in.
If you don't
guys
make,
just go ahead.
If
Okay,
you
we'll
don't
sit
make
back a little bit.
If you don't make your own airtime, you're not going to get it.
Go
More
ahead.
trouble at lap number 27. One P.J. Jones finds the very same problem in turn number 4.
Oh,
Whoa, he almost took a morsel out there.
he did. He
And
almost saved it.
Dylan from behind.
Uh-oh. Where'd that come from?
61 looked like he might have gotten the back.
See, it's not as easy as it looks.
No, I can't follow it. I can't follow it. You guys go ahead.
Watch this there. This would be a great angle. You can see the 19 cars underneath Boris said. That makes your car looser.
And listen,
And right when it goes to gas.
Oh, he almost saved it.
And actually, real fortunate that he didn't get turned back around to go head on the new fence.
hope they had insurance on that camera.
Ward, 2 tires,
Whoa! 6 teams getting right side tires only here.
including Mikey.
See Buck Shaw
Our man
almost
Mikey,
getting
as you call me every now and then.
and one team getting fuel only, Joe Nemechek's, although he would fade back into the field fairly quickly. On the restart, watch this. 4 wide for the race lead, 3 wide for the lead, plus 1 lap car up there mixed in as well.
It's still 4 wide.
Wow, look at that. That's impressive, isn't it?
Was from where I sat.
Adam Petty shoots to the bottom of the racetrack and tries to gain the lead from one Ward Burton. That's another thing you say. You say one.
Adam was actually a lap down. He was
Go ahead.
Is this critique Allen Day?
Well, you're easy. You didn't need sleep.
Sleep.
You know, Mike got home at 11:40 last night.
I don't want to hear it. After about, I've already chewed him out for that. After about 40 laps on this set of tires, things in that wild racing would settle down and one driver would establish himself out in front, and that would be the man we're looking at there, Jeff Burton. He would kind of motor away from the field. This is kind of the first long run of the race. Explain why the field kind of separates at this point.
Well, just the cars that handle well on short runs do not necessarily work well on the long runs, and these cars here were decent on the short runs and great on the long runs. We saw Jeff Green run well, Ward Burton and Jeff Burton on the long runs, and Matt Kenseth would kind of fade a little bit. So he was kind of hoping for a short shootout at the end.
Okay. Lap number 116, caution waving for oil on the speedway. Bringing the leaders in for their final pit stops, only about 25 laps after a previous stop. And so with a short run on tires, you know what that means.
You're going to have a little bit of
tragedy
coming into play.
And as Michael's been talking about the 2-tire stop, they came into play a lot there at the end of the race. And actually, the Excedrin Chevrolet only took on 2 tires and actually gained a couple of positions there at the end, too. So
2 tires was a great call at the end of this race for people that had decent cars. I was coming in to get forward. I saw the 9-car drop and leave after getting 2, and we called it off. I said, let's do 2 tires, guys, and that was a key to us getting a top 5 finish in our little Band-Aid Chevy.
Trouble just after the restart. That would be one Jason Leffler.
There was some contact. I was a couple cars behind us, and he got together with somebody. I'm not sure exactly who it was, and that turned him around into the outside wall.
And we don't get a real good look at it on the replay either. I bet you he could tell you.
I bet he would, too.
You asked him.
Be glad to tell you.
I'll bet he would. So that brings out the caution and bunches up the field once more. Now, on those pit stops with the 2 tires, Ward Burton got out in front of Jeff Burton. Got off pit road a little quick, so now he's the leader. Jeff is actually back in 4th position. We go back racing one more time, and Jeff makes a nifty little move to get from 4th to 2nd in the space of about 1 lap.
I think what you saw there, you're talking about, I think Johnny was talking about earlier, drafting. When cars get bottled up there just side by side, then you got a car that will shoot just right past you and cut a big hole in the air and look like he shot by there and went in front of it.
Up to 2nd now with 11 to go. You see there, begins pressuring Brother Ward for the win. And with 8 to go, there will be trouble off turn 4, and it will involve the race leader.
Yeah, most of the guys run right down the bottom. When you cross through the center, you see the cars are already loose. And he's just holding on, and you see the smoke pour off tires. But, you know, Ward did a good job of holding it for as long as he did. And I think he just got loose cutting through the center of the track. And, you know, the car's got to be pretty free to run fast, and that's pretty unfortunate because he ran extremely well all day long.
And that was the pass for the win. Matt Kenseth by Jeff Burton when Jeff had to slow up to keep from running into Ward.
It was kind of turnabout's fair play because Jeff lost one, or won one in Las Vegas by the same way because of Mark Martin having to back off for a car spinning out. So he got one, lost one.
There you go. Matt Kenseth, 2nd win of the 2000 NASCAR Busch Series season. He was in the top 4 or 5 all race long. I know we really didn't talk about it much through the highlights there, but again, solid up front, in position.
Matt had a great weekend.
Led the lap that counted.
That's exactly right. Jason, you came home 7th with your car.
Very good run for
Tire
us.
stop at the end had a lot to do with that?
I think we had a 10th place car and gained a couple of positions there. Very pleased with the run all weekend, actually.
A couple things to mention here. Matt Kenseth has never finished worse than 3rd at California in 4 Busch Series races. Wow.
And now a cup race.
And 1 cup.
And now a cup race. And Elton Sawyer came back from a lap down, 39th to 9th. Jay Sauter, 42nd to 10th. Good runs for them. Championship standings. Jeff Green over Todd Bodine. You see the interval there. After the 10th event of the season, Busch Series cars running at Richmond Friday night. Jason Keller, thank you.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Enjoyed it. Best of luck in your 200th start this weekend.
Good deal. Look forward to it. Thank you.
We'll come back with question of the week next.
This week's Pep Boys tip of the week: have your brakes inspected twice a year to prevent problems before really cold or hot weather arrives.
It is time now for one of the more popular segments of our show. Question of the Week, where we put your topics to our expert panel and get their answers. Sponsored by Pelote Driving Shoes. This week's question from Willow Grove, Pennsylvania. Kelly Murphy wants to know, what does it take for Winston Cup drivers to have provisional starting spots available to them?
Well, the first 4 races of the year, it's based off last year's points, and then after that, it goes to this year's points, and it basically goes, they take qualifying, take top 36, and then they, for the people who didn't make the race, they go right back to points where you are in
Car owner points.
Car owner points, and you start taking them as you need them.
So you might not have any driver's points, but you join a team in the middle of the season that has car owner points, and so you would be eligible for a provisional ahead of somebody that is ahead of you in driver's points. That's the only real trick to it, is all the provisionals are based on either car owners' current points or Winston Cup champions, past champions provisionals.
And then there's the whole trick of, if you're in the top 25 in owners' points, you not get charged provisionals. If you're outside the top 25, you only have so many you can use up.
And one thing that I would like to mention, Robbie Gordon had on Pelote Driving Shoes.
And I use them too. Absolutely.
So there you have it.
We're full of energy today, aren't we?
That's right.
Yes, I am. Great night's sleep.
We'll come back and we'll preview Richmond next.
My Sealy perfect.
If you have a question for our drivers, mail it to us to Question of the Week, Post Office Box 240417, Charlotte, North Carolina 28224, or email us at speedvision.com. If we use your question, you'll receive a pair of Pelote Driving Shoes. Please specify blue or black and your shoe size. Pelote Driving Shoes. Driving shoes you can wear all day.
Dale Jarrett won the Pontiac Excitement 400 at Richmond 1 year ago. His first victory of the '99 season, beginning his run to the NASCAR Winston Cup Championship. Jarrett and the rest of the Cup troops back in the Virginia Capitol this weekend for another 400-lap go. We preview the event now with our expert panel, Michael Waltrip, Johnny Benson, and Phil Parsons, starting with a spin around the 3/4-mile track. Go.
Coming off turn 4 down the front straightaway, it's an arc all the way down the front straightaway, much like California was, with pretty wide entrance into turn 1. Usually early on, you want to be right on the bottom of the racetrack next to the yellow line, but we've run some now, so we're up the racetrack some.
And you're following a guy that flat knows how to get around that racetrack. Dale Jr. won the Busch race there last year.
You were following him.
You were, now you're past him.
Now
So
you're
this
riding
guy
with the
here
winner.
can do better. What I'd like to say is mentality, everything about this track, it's a short track. It's a full-blown Martinsville, Loudon, Smar and Loudon, but it's a full-blown short track. We go there with that type of mental attitude to know that you're going to bump, you're going to grind, and you revert back or flick back to your young days when you raced at Hickory or Kentucky Motor Speedway or wherever you were, and that's how you go there thinking.
Tons of testing at Richmond over the last few weeks. There have been all kinds of Winston Cup and Busch Series teams there. Why this rush to Richmond to test all of a sudden?
Just a short track. You know, Richmond's such a good race to go to and run at, but it's a night race, and it's just, I mean, it's a great track to race on, but it's hard to get a hold of. So I think a lot of guys are just trying to go there to see if they can't get a hold of the racetrack and see what happens. Hopefully they won't do nothing to it before we get to racing.
The Sawyers did a great job with this facility. I don't know how many seats there are now, well over 100,000 seats.
They'll be full.
Now ISC owns the thing, but they have done a great job with this facility from what it used to be back, 10 years ago. It's
the old fairgrounds
Yeah,
days.
the old fairgrounds racetrack, but now they've got a showplace now.
Issues, any at all, with practicing in the daylight and racing at nighttime?
I don't believe so. We've tried to follow that closely, and the track just doesn't change that much. Whatever you have in happy hour in the afternoon is pretty much what you're going to have at night. The track doesn't tighten up significantly from one to the other, so it's a real consistent track, and the sealer that's put on there, you said that word sealer pre-Richmond era,
Yeah.
drivers would freak out. No, please don't. But they sealed that place, and it sticks. It's pretty amazing.
Should be a great race. Richmond on Saturday night for the Pontiac Excitement 400. Of course, we'll reassemble our expert panel Monday night here on Speed Vision to review all the weekend's action. The NASCAR calendar for the weekend. Friday night, Busch Series, Hardee's 250 at Richmond. Saturday, the Winston Cup cars in the Pontiac Excitement 400. And Sunday, the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series returns to action in the Ram Tough 200 at Gateway International Raceway in St. Louis. Thursday, 7 Eastern, Stacy Compton's my guest on This Week in NASCAR. Next Monday night, Richmond and St. Louis highlights with our expert panel. here on NASCAR Inside Winston Cup. Back for our final 45 or so seconds.
Why do you, when you say expert, why do you always, smile and snicker and all
not
that
look
stuff?
at us.
Yeah, and not look at us.
I guess I've just been trained to be that way.
Oh,
We are going to come back here next Monday night and
be all the way.
totally
That's right.
diagnose and break down all the racing action that goes on in NASCAR this weekend. So be sure, if you haven't tuned into the show before and you're just catching us here at the end and you think these guys could be interesting, watch next Monday night. We're going to bring you a bunch of stuff.
I
Right,
got to
Johnny?
thank Learn Frame for sponsoring Winston Westcar along with Lycos. So they're our associate sponsor now on our Cup car.
Johnny
Okay.
was the winner.
That's right.
I think it's time to go get some sleep.
That's right.
Thanks for watching. See you next week with Richmond and St. Louis highlights.
NASCAR Inside Winston Cup has been presented by Pep Boys, Cars Like Us, People Love Us, and Moog Chassis Parts, driving NASCAR Winston Cup champions to victory. Drivers and crew apparel is provided by Chase Authentics, the authentic trackside apparel of NASCAR. New for all race fan families, introducing the Simpson Child Cars